On the dusty gray surface of Viridian 9, where the sun barely pierced the thick clouds of pollution, the sound of heavy machinery and human labor echoed endlessly through the cavernous mining pits carved into the barren landscape. Kara wiped sweat from her brow, her hands raw from the endless hours spent repairing failing equipment, her eyes sharp despite the exhaustion that clung to every bone in her body. For years, humanity had been trapped beneath the iron fist of the Excelthori, an alien race whose towering forms and shimmering armor ruled the galaxy with a cold precision. They called humans slaves, a name that tasted bitter on Kara's tongue every time it was uttered. Yet, even in chains, her mind refused to break. Among the other miners and workers, Kara was different. Quiet, observant, and clever, she had learned to hide her true thoughts, but inside, a fire burned fierce and unyielding. One day, while scavenging through the ruins of a collapsed tunnel, Kara stumbled upon a hidden chamber buried beneath layers of rock and dust, a room filled not with the glittering tech of the Excelthori, but strange human artifacts, old blueprints, and devices that hummed faintly with life. Her heart pounded as she realized this was no ordinary find. It was proof that humans had once been far more than slaves. They had been creators, inventors, rulers in their own right. She shared the discovery with a small group of trusted companions, including Jax, a sharp-tongued mechanic with a quick wit, and Lena, a former scientist whose hope had long been buried beneath despair. Together, they began piecing together the secrets of their lost legacy, but their activities did not go unnoticed. The Excelthari surveillance drones, sleek and silent, hovered closer each day, their glowing eyes probing every corner of the colony. The oppressive leaders tightened their grip, sending brutal patrols to crush any hint of rebellion before it could grow. Kara's group found themselves hunted, their meeting places raided, and their friends disappearing into the cold void of imprisonment or worse. Still, the knowledge they had uncovered fueled a determination stronger than fear. In whispered conversations, deep underground, plans were made not for submission, but for uprising. The once broken and beaten humans began to remember who they were, and as Kara stood beneath the dim glow of stolen lights, staring at the ancient blueprints that promised power and freedom, a spark ignited within her, a spark that could set the galaxy ablaze. Yet, as they prepared to strike back, Kara knew the path ahead was perilous. The Excelthari were ruthless masters, and any misstep would bring swift and brutal punishment. But the question burned hotter than any fear. How long could humans remain slaves when their own legacy was waiting to be reclaimed from the ashes of oppression? The answer lay in the choices they would make next, and in the strength they found within themselves to challenge a seemingly invincible enemy. The air in the hidden rebel base was thick with tension and determination, as Kara and her group prepared for what could be the most dangerous mission they had ever attempted. After weeks of careful planning, they knew that capturing the Excelthori research facility was their best chance to gain the upper hand. The facility, known as the Citadel of Glass, was perched high above the rest of the colony, protected by layers of security and guarded by elite soldiers. It was rumored to contain secrets the Excelthori had stolen from countless worlds' technology that could crush any resistance before it even began. Yet, Kara believed it held something even more valuable, the proof of humanity's lost greatness buried under alien rule. As night cloaked the colony in shadows, Kara's team slipped through narrow tunnels and abandoned shafts, moving like ghosts beneath the watchful eyes of patrolling drones. Every step was measured, every breath quiet, knowing a single mistake would mean capture or death. The tension was almost unbearable as they reached the outer walls of the citadel. Using makeshift tools, crafted from scavenged parts, they bypassed the security locks, slipping inside where sterile corridors gleamed coldly under harsh lights. The silence was broken only by the soft hum of machines and the distant footsteps of patrolling guards. Heart pounding, Kara led her team deeper, their eyes scanning for any sign of the hidden chambers they sought. Then, in a forgotten sublevel filled with dusty consoles and old servers, they found it, a vault containing data cores pulsing with knowledge, the true treasure of the HFY Empire. Among the files were detailed schematics of weapons, energy shields, and propulsion systems, but most shocking were records showing that many of these advances were adapted from stolen human designs. The discovery shattered the myth of the HFY superiority and ignited hope in the rebels' hearts. But their success came at a cost. Alarms blared suddenly, red lights flooding the halls as the HFY security forces realized the breach. Kara's team fought their way out, evading heavily armed soldiers in a frantic dash through the twisting corridors. Blast of fire echoed behind them, and smoke choked the air as emergency systems activated, sealing doors and flooding parts of the citadel with chemical agents. Against all odds, the rebels escaped into the night, carrying with them the stolen knowledge that could change everything. Their narrow victory was a spark that spread quickly through the enslaved populations across Viridian 9 and beyond. Messages of hope and resistance passed secretly from one settlement to another, and soon small groups of rebels began launching coordinated strikes on supply lines and communication hubs. The HFY, stunned by the unexpected uprising, retaliated with brutal force. War machines rolled through the mining colonies, crushing buildings and sending waves of terrified workers fleeing into hiding. But every attack only strengthened human resolve, and more enslaved species, long oppressed and forgotten, joined the fight. Among the rebels, Kara emerged as a symbol of defiance and courage. Her leadership and determination inspired others to believe in a future beyond slavery. Yet, the pressure mounted as the HFY commanders unleashed propaganda campaigns to paint humans as savages and traitors, hoping to divide the alliance. Despite the harsh conditions and mounting losses, the rebels held fast. Using the recovered technology, they began to hack the HFY's communication networks, spreading messages of unity and truth, exposing the lies of their oppressors. The rebellion became more than just a fight for freedom. It was a battle for identity and dignity. But deep within the shadows of the galaxy, the HFY's elite forces regrouped, preparing a devastating counterattack that could crush the rebellion before it truly began. As Kara and her allies faced this looming threat, the question hung in the air. Could the flames of rebellion survive the coming storm? Or would the weight of centuries of oppression snuff out the fragile hope of a new dawn? The answer would shape the fate of not just humanity, but all who dreamed of freedom on the stars. The uprising that had begun as flickering sparks now roared like wildfire across the sectors controlled by the HFY, spreading hope where once there was only despair. But the true test of the rebellion's strength lay ahead, as Kara and her allies prepared to face an enemy who would not surrender so easily. In the heart of the conquered territories, their small rebel group had grown into a force capable of hacking communications, sabotaging supply lines, and rallying not only humans but also other enslaved alien species who shared a burning hatred for the HFY's ruthless empire. And as Kara sat surrounded by her closest advisors in the cramped command center hidden beneath the ruins of an abandoned mining outpost. She could feel the weight of their mission pressing on her like the thick, toxic air outside. Every decision carried consequences that could mean the difference between freedom and total annihilation. Yet none could deny the fierce pride swelling within them all, for the stolen technology they had reclaimed was beginning to level the playing field. Ancient human weapons designs adapted with the new knowledge found in the HFY data vaults gave the rebels a fighting chance, allowing them to disrupt the aliens' once unassailable control. But the cost was high. Each victory was paid for in blood, and the HFY's reprisals grew more brutal with each passing day, sending war machines to crush rebel-held sectors, flooding entire colonies with propaganda claiming humans were savages unworthy of mercy or freedom, hoping to sow distrust and fear. Yet the rebels remained united, driven by the truth that had been unearthed. The HFY's power was a fragile illusion built on stolen inventions and forgotten histories, and this revelation was a torch carried proudly by Kara and her followers, lighting a path toward liberation. Their strikes grew bolder as they coordinated attacks on energy grids, weapon depots, and communication arrays, their enemies scrambling to respond to the growing chaos, while underground networks spread coded messages, inspiring more enslaved beings to rise and fight alongside humanity, each small victory adding fuel to the raging fire of rebellion. But the greatest challenge was still to come, for deep within the HFY's capital world lay the citadel of fortress that had long symbolized their dominance over the galaxy, a towering structure of shimmering metal and glass that seemed untouchable, protected by ancient defenses, and guarded by the elite forces known as the Star Sentinels, soldiers trained from birth to serve without question. Kara knew that to truly end the reign of the HFY, they would need to strike at the heart of their power, to tear down the symbols of oppression not just physically, but in the minds of all who had suffered. And so the plan was set in motion, a daring infiltration into the citadel where hidden archives awaited archive that might reveal the full extent of the HFY's crimes and the key to destroying their legacy once and for all. But this mission was unlike any before, fraught with peril, and the rebels prepared with grim determination, aware that many would not return as the day of the assault approached. Kara walked among her people, seeing in their faces a mixture of fear, hope, and fierce resolve. And she found strength in their unity, in the knowledge that even if the HFY were stronger in numbers and technology, they lacked one thing humanity had in abundance: an unbreakable spirit and a will to fight for freedom, no matter the odds. The night before the operation, Kara stayed alone in the shadows of the command center, studying the maps and blueprints stolen from the enemy, her mind racing through every possible scenario, every risk, while memories of the long years spent in chains flashed through her thoughts, fueling a fierce determination that this night would mark the beginning of a new age. At dawn, under a sky heavy with dark clouds, the rebel team moved out in silence, slipping past patrols and evading surveillance with the help of hacked security systems. Their every step a delicate dance between success and disaster, the tension so thick it seemed to choke the air. Inside the citadel, they found hallways lined with shimmering panels and echoing with the cold hum of advanced machinery. But they pressed forward, moving swiftly to the central archive, their senses alert for any sign of ambush. Finally, they reached a chamber glowing with the soft light of ancient consoles and data cores. And as Kara began downloading the forbidden knowledge, an alarm shattered the silence, signaling that their presence was discovered. What followed was a desperate battle to escape as the citadel's defenses sprang to life, turrets opening fire, corridors sealing shut, and elite guards closing in with ruthless efficiency. The rebels fought with every ounce of strength, using both technology and cunning to outmaneuver their pursuers, but casualties were heavy, and hope wavered like a candle in the wind. Just when it seemed the enemy would overwhelm them, reinforcements from nearby rebel cells arrived, turning the tide and allowing Kara's group to slip through the collapsing corridors to safety. As they fled back to their hidden base, data drives in hand, the stolen knowledge revealed not only the truth of the Exceltharies' theft of human ingenuity, but also blueprints for a weapon capable of disabling the alien war machines that terrorize their worlds. News of the daring raid spread like wildfire, inspiring even those who had long given up hope to rise and take up arms. And soon coordinated attacks multiplied, striking at the Exceltharies' supply lines and communication networks, forcing the Empire into a defensive stance for the first time in centuries. But with every victory came a new danger, as the Exceltharies leadership, desperate to maintain control, unleashed propaganda campaigns designed to pit enslaved species against each other, to fracture the fragile alliances forming among the rebels, and whispers of betrayal began to spread within Kara's ranks, threatening to unravel everything they had built. In the face of these threats, Kara's leadership became more vital than ever, her voice steady and her resolve unshakable as she reminded her followers of the true enemy and the shared dream that united them all. The rebellion became not just a fight for survival, but a struggle for identity, a reclaiming of lost pride and dignity that echoed through every act of defiance. And yet, in the shadows, beyond the rebellion's reach, the Exceltharii were not idle, preparing a counterstrike of terrifying power, deploying secret weapons and gathering ring-foring corners of the galaxy, determined to crush the flames of rebellion before they could engulf the Empire. As Kara gazed at the stars above, she understood that the war ahead would test every fiber of their being, but she also knew that once the legacy of fire was lit, it could never be extinguished. The path to freedom was uncertain and dangerous, but with the truth in their hands and the courage in their hearts, the rebels were ready to face them, storm, and change the fate of the galaxy forever. The rebellion that had once seemed fragile now stood on the edge of a turning tide, the air charged with urgency and hope as Kara and her allies prepared for their most daring move, yet a direct strike against the Exceltharii capital itself, a place thought untouchable, guarded by the most advanced defenses and the most loyal soldiers the Empire could muster. Every rebel knew the risks, that this mission could mean the end of their fight or the beginning of a new era. But their spirits were unbroken, fueled by the stolen knowledge that had revealed the Exceltharies' greatest secret. Their power came not from strength alone, but from fear and deception, and now the truth was spreading like wildfire across the galaxy, rallying more enslaved species to the cause, united by the shared dream of freedom and justice. And as the rebel fleet gathered in the shadow of the capital's massive orbital defenses, tension thickened like storm clouds. Before a fierce battle, Kara stood on the bridge of the flagship, her gaze fixed on the glowing city below, its spires and towers gleaming under artificial lights, a symbol of tyranny that had ruled for centuries. And yet now it looked fragile beneath the growing storm of rebellion. Rested on the console, fingers tracing the map of the city, its weak points marked in red access points where old human designs had been used to build defenses, weaknesses only the rebels could exploit. And her team had spent countless nights planning how to slip through these cracks unnoticed, to reach the heart of the city and ignite the spark that would topple the Empire. The moment came faster than expected as the fleet slipped through layers of shields, dodging patrols and laser fire with skill born from desperation and hope, the silence broken only by the tense commands exchanged among the rebel ships. And when they finally landed, the rebels poured into the city's streets like shadows, moving swiftly and silently through alleyways and underground tunnels, evading patrols and cameras with the help of hack systems, their hearts pounding with fear and determination. Inside the capital, Kara's team made their way to the ancient citadel, a towering fortress said to house the Overlord himself and the secrets that kept the Empire in control. And as they entered the cold halls lined with alien glyphs and shimmering metal, the rebels faced traps and ambushes, testing their skill and courage at every turn. Yet they pressed on, driven by the knowledge that their victory would inspire millions. The final confrontation came in the throne room, a vast chamber bathed in eerie light where the Overlord waited, calm and imposing, his eyes glowing with cold power. Kara stepped forward, meeting his gaze without fear, and in the battle that followed, she realized that the true strength of humanity was not in weapons or technology, but in unity and in the will to be free. With the help of her comrades and the stolen human technology they wielded, they shattered the Overlord's defenses, and as the citadel began to crumble around them, Kara triggered a chain reaction, setting the fortress ablaze, a blazing symbol of the Empire's fall. As fire consumed the ancient halls, news of the rebels' triumph spread quickly, igniting uprisings in every corner of the galaxy. And with the Exceltari's leadership shattered, former slaves and allies seized control of key systems, rewriting the future with every act of liberation. But even in victory, Kara knew the fight was far from over, for the scars of oppression ran deep, and the task of building a new world would be harder than toppling an empire. Yet, as she looked out over the dawn breaking across the liberated cities, she felt a fierce hope burning within her, a promise that humanity's legacy would no longer be one of slavery, but of freedom, courage, and the unyielding power of the human spirit. The fires of rebellion had finally settled, and the galaxy was holding its breath, standing at the edge of a new beginning as Kara and the freed peoples faced a world transformed by war and sacrifice. The once unbreakable chains that bound humanity and other enslaved species had been shattered. The Excelthari Empire, broken beneath the weight of its own lies and cruelty. But victory had not come without cost. Cities lay in ruins. Lives had been lost, and trust was a fragile thread woven between old enemies and new allies. Yet amidst the ashes of destruction, a fragile hope stirred, promising a dawn unlike any the galaxy had known before. And as Kara stood on a high balcony overlooking the recovering city of New Viridian, her heart was heavy with the responsibility now resting on her shoulders. The war was over, but the true challenge, the rebirth of a free society built from pain and struggle, had only just begun, and her thoughts drifted to the countless faces of those who had fought and fallen, each one a reminder that freedom was a gift hard-won and precious beyond words. Around her, the city was slowly coming back to life. Survivors rebuilding homes, children laughing for the first time in years, and the strange but hopeful mingling of diverse species working side by side, united by a vision of peace and equality. Yet beneath this fragile surface, tensions simmered, for centuries of oppression had left wounds that could not be healed overnight, and the shadow of old fears and grudges lingered, threatening to tear apart the delicate alliances forged in fire. Kara knew that leadership demanded more than courage in battle. It required wisdom, patience, and a willingness to listen to voices often drowned out by the noise of war. and so she traveled from settlement to settlement, meeting with elders, former slaves, and former enemies, willing to embrace a new future, seeking common ground amid vast differences. During one such meeting, she encountered Raun, a former Exelthari commander who had turned against his own people, haunted by the horrors he had witnessed. And though many distrusted him, Kara believed in the power of redemption, knowing that to build a lasting peace, they would have to forgive and learn to trust again, a lesson harder than any battle fought with weapons. As the new government began to take shape, Kara and her council faced difficult decisions: how to rebuild shattered economies, how to defend against remnants of the old empire still plotting revenge, and how to ensure that the darkness of slavery would never return, owing to unite worlds that had once been torn apart by fear and hatred. Meanwhile, deep in the outer reaches of the galaxy, secret factions loyal to the fallen Exelthari sought to regroup, hiding in shadows and preparing to strike back with guerrilla tactics designed to destabilize the fragile new order. And Kara's spies brought troubling news of sabotage, unrest, and whispers of betrayal within their own ranks, forcing her to constantly walk a tightrope between vigilance and trust. Despite the dangers, moments of peace offered glimpses of something truly remarkable: artisans and scholars rediscovering lost knowledge, scientists and engineers combining alien and human technology to create wonders once thought impossible, and communities forging bonds over shared stories of survival and hope. One evening, as Kara stood beneath the stars, she felt the weight of history pressing upon her, aware that the future was a blank canvas painted with both fear and possibility. And she vowed silently that no matter what trials awaited, humanity and its allies would rise stronger, that the dawn of this new era would be one of freedom, justice, and unity, shining brightly for all to see. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with challenges that would test their spirit and resolve. But the legacy of fire they had ignited in the darkest hours would guide them, a reminder that even when called slaves, they had the power to burn down tyranny and build a world reborn from the flames.